Hello and welcome. It's probably been the longest period that has gone between episodes. So perhaps I've broken my own record. Positive spin on this. But, of course, I would like to record a lot earlier than this, but unfortunately, my health has been quite severely impacted, especially over the festive season, Christmas and New Year, and there's been I may perhaps not share it in detail, but there's been, I think, in a journal episode a few episodes ago, I think I've gone into a little bit more depth about my mental health, and so unfortunately it's just there's just simply it's just the way it's been. Feels a lot of this is just going through the process of allowing or acceptance of, as much as I would ideally like to record each week, for my own sort of continuity, and also I'm aware of, those of you who are following along with A New Earth. It would be nice to have that sort of that flow of weekly episodes, or or regular episodes of following the book. So I won't make any promises of even though I feel like I want to get back to regular listening. I feel like I've had this conversation many times with myself and with you listening, that of intentions, and which is it's good. Intentions can be good, but perhaps it's just the acceptance of when recording is available, it will happen, such as now, and perhaps I can acknowledge the nowness of the recording, and perhaps there can be some gratitude there, and some enjoyment and acknowledgement about just this recording here and now, and not worrying about future episodes, and perhaps that can be let go of in some ways. So during this time of perhaps I can call it unwellness, time of feeling unwell, it's been quite severe at times, where access to the present moment, or the practice itself of just being present, and it's not been accessible for me. And it's not something I've forced upon myself to do. I could sense that it wasn't the right thing to do, to try and force myself to read a book, or to watch a video, to listen to some spiritual teachings. It just felt too much, too unbearable. So I'm sure there was glimpses, moments, short periods of time of being present or having clarity, but overall it was quite a difficult time for me, and it's still very, I'm still very much in that difficultness, but there's been a little bit of a slight bit of spaciousness, a glimpse of being present. So I'm just acknowledging that, okay, there's a little bit of spaciousness here, and there's enough energy and desire to record, so here I am. I was able to, for the first time in a long while, I was able to watch I watched a spiritual teaching video yesterday. It was It was a very old Eckhart Tolle video. I think he was at the Omega Center, so something when he was quite fairly new to the kind of scene as being a teacher in that regard. And I find those videos very useful to watch. I've watched them several times. I think there's 8 episodes in total, 8 parts. And the video I watched yesterday, there was a pointer that Eckhart shared of resisting nothing. Resisting nothing. And he shared examples of going into non-resistance, where it's quite an active, it's both an active and non-active thing to do, non-resisting, because it's I think he shared that when you resist something, it's a doing. There's an effort almost required, or there's energy being expelled. There's a kind of I guess just a doingness to it. And with non-resisting, it's a letting go. It's in some ways a non-doing. And he talked further about, with non-resistance, it's almost a process you go through. You have to. It's almost a small path. As we're talking about it, it's very easy to think of it as a thought. Okay, yes, non-resistance. Okay, don't resist anything, and it can be very surface level, but it's a very kind of experiential practice where you get in touch with what's going on in this moment, and you accept the isness of the moment. You accept the isness of it, and in acceptance of the isness, you are no longer resisting. So I think Eckhart gave an example of turbulence or being the unhappy me. As soon as you experience and you acknowledge in awareness that, okay, I'm the unhappy me in this moment, okay. And when you stay with that awareness, it almost transmutes into peace. As soon as you're not resisting anything, then peace naturally arises with that. In the activity of resistance, there's a contraction, there's an energy, there's a egoic energy happening. So it's almost like creating a black cloud in the sky. It covers up this spaciousness in resisting. The energy is pulled in that. And in the non-resisting, the cloud dissipates. It can no longer survive in non-resistance. So that was a very powerful pointer for me. It's what I needed to hear, what kind of resonated with me in that time. And it seems as though this is how things happen at certain times. Certain pointers impact us, and when others don't, and in other times other pointers hit us and other pointers don't. For example, maybe in a few months' time I may listen to a talk which has the pointer of non-resistance, and it may not hit me the same way as it did yesterday. It may not, depending on where I am. So everything's very fluid as well. There's no attachments to even this pointer. It's not something you need to hold sacred and remember and recite every day. Non-resistance. It's just, okay, this is a helpful platform, it's a helpful teaching to get to presence. And once you're in presence, you can almost drop the pointer. It's just simply it's exactly what it is. It's a signpost. So it is only a relative value to it. The true value is it's where it's pointing you to. It's the present moment. So just wanted to share that briefly before before diving into a new earth, and you can pick up to where we left off. So again, for me, this may seem a bit strange because, opening up a book and continuing it after a long break can seem a bit disorientating. It may take a moment to, at least for me, to plug back into the reading of this book, especially if you're listening to this as it's being released. So for you, it's been a month as well of reading, picking up from where we left off. And then maybe those of you who've got the book and you've just finished it, you're way ahead. You've finished the book already, and now you're forced to listen to it again, which may be a good thing. It's often when consuming content, it's very difficult to process all of it. It's quite natural to go back to something and picking up on pointers or sentences that you didn't pick up first time round, or didn't hit the same way, didn't acknowledge. So I thought with spiritual material, it's almost you can never read it too much. It's always it always has a freshness to it as well. So let's we are in a chapter titled Breaking Free, and this is chapter, let's see what chapter this is. Thought I just skimmed past it, but let's go to the beginning, contents page. So it's chapter 6, I believe, and it's a slightly shorter chapter than, I think, the pain body, and so breaking free. So we are on the section called Unhappiness. So we've read the section passage titled Presence, and then we moved on to the return of the pain body, and then we also read about the pain body in children. So hopefully that brings something back. I think I mentioned about the pain body in children. It's a great passage for those who are parents, and it's a great way to understand a child's pain body and how you can nurture a child in their practice, where it may not be a direct practice of presence, but perhaps it's a way of where you're not adding to the child's ego or egoic energy. And now we are on a passage called Unhappiness, which already feels like an important title for a passage, just by that one word. So let's begin with a passage of Unhappiness. Not all unhappiness is of the pain body. Some of it is new unhappiness, created whenever you are out of alignment with the present moment, when the now is denied in one way or another. When you recognize that the present moment is always already the case, and therefore inevitable, you can bring an uncompromising inner yes to it, and so not only create no further unhappiness, but with inner resistance gone, find yourself empowered by life itself. The pain body's unhappiness is always clearly out of proportion to the apparent cause. In other words, it is an overreaction. This is how it is recognized, although not usually by the sufferer, the person possessed. Someone with a heavy pain body easily finds reasons for being upset, angry, hurt, sad, or fearful. Relatively insignificant things that someone else would shrug off with a smile or not even notice become the apparent cause of intense unhappiness. They are, of course, not the true cause, but only act as a trigger. They bring back to life the old accumulated emotion. The emotion then moves into the head and amplifies and energizes the egoic mind structures. Pain body and ego are close relatives. They need each other. The triggering event or situation is then interpreted and reacted to through the screen of a heavily emotional ego. This is to say, its significance becomes completely distorted. You look at the present through the eyes of the emotional past within you. In other words, what you see and experience is not in the event or situation, but in you. Or in some cases, it may be there in the event or situation, but you amplify it through your reaction. This reaction, this amplification, is what the pain body wants and needs, what it feeds on. For someone possessed by a heavy pain body, it is often impossible to step outside his or her distorted interpretation, the heavily emotional story. The more negative emotion there is in a story, the heavier and more impenetrable it becomes. And so the story is not recognized as such, but is taken to be reality. When you are completely trapped in the movement of thought and the accompanying emotion, stepping outside is not possible because you don't even know that there is an outside. You are trapped in your own movie or dream, trapped in your own hell. To you it is reality, and no other reality is possible. And as far as you are concerned, your reaction is the only possible reaction. And the next passage is titled, Breaking Identification with the Pain Body. A person with a strong, active pain body has a particular energy emanation that other people perceive as extremely unpleasant. When they meet such a person, some people will immediately want to remove themselves or reduce interaction with him or her to a minimum. They feel repulsed by the person's energy field. Others will feel a wave of aggression towards this person, and they will be rude or attack him or her verbally and in some cases even physically. This means there is something within them that resonates with the other person's pain body. What they react to so strongly is also in them. It is their own pain body. Not surprisingly, people with heavy and frequently active pain bodies often find themselves in conflict situations. Sometimes, of course, they actively provoke them, but at other times they may not actually do anything. The negativity they emanate is enough to attract hostility and generate conflict. It requires a high degree of presence to avoid reacting when confronted by someone with such an active pain body. If you are able to stay present, It sometimes happens that your presence enables the other person to disidentify from his or her own pain body and thus experience the miracle of a sudden awakening. Although the awakening may be short-lived, the awakening process will have become initiated. One of the first such awakenings that I witnessed happened many years ago. My doorbell rang close to 11 o'clock at night. My neighbour Ethel's anxiety-laden voice came through the intercom. "We need to talk. This is very important. Please let me in." Ethel was middle-aged, intelligent, and highly educated. She also had a strong ego and a heavy pain body. She escaped from Nazi Germany when she was an adolescent, and many of her family members perished in the concentration camps. Ethel sat down on my sofa, agitated, her hands trembling. She took letters and documents out of the file she carried with her and spread them out all over the sofa and floor. At once I had the strange sensation as if a dimmer switch had turned the inside of my entire body to maximum power. There was nothing to do other than remain open, alert, intensely present with every cell of the body. I looked at her with no thought and no judgment, and listened in stillness, without any mental commentary. A torrent of words came out of her mouth. "They sent me another disturbing letter today. They are conducting a vendetta against me. You must help. We need to fight them together. Their crooked lawyers will stop at nothing. I will lose my home. They are threatening me with dispossession." It transpired that she refused to pay the service charge because the property managers had failed to carry out some repairs. They in turn threatened to take her to court. She talked for 10 minutes or so. I sat, looked, and listened. Suddenly she stopped talking, looked at the papers all around her, as if she had just woken up from a dream. She became calm and gentle. Her entire energy field changed. Then she looked at me and said, "This isn't important at all, is it?" "No, it isn't," I said. She sat quietly for a couple more minutes, then picked up her papers and left. The next morning she stopped me in the street, looking at me somewhat suspiciously. "What did you do to me?" "Last night was the first night in years that I slept well. In fact, I slept like a baby." She believed I had done something to her, but I had done nothing. Instead of asking what I had done to her, perhaps she should have asked what I had not done. I had not reacted, not confirmed the reality of her story, not fed her mind with more thought and her pain body with more emotion. I had allowed her to experience whatever she was experiencing at that moment, and the power of allowing lies in non-interference, non-doing. Being present is always infinitely more powerful than anything one could say or do, although sometimes being present can give rise to words or actions. What happened to her was not yet a permanent shift, but a glimpse of what is possible, a glimpse of what was already within her. In Zen, such a glimpse is called Satori. Satori is a moment of presence, a brief stepping out of the voice in your head, the thought processes, and their reflection in the body as emotion. It is the arising of inner spaciousness where before there was the clutter of thought and the turmoil of emotion. The thinking mind cannot understand presence, and so will often misinterpret it. It will say that you are uncaring, distant, have no compassion, are not relating. The truth is you are relating, but at a level deeper than thought and emotion. In fact, at that level there is a true coming together, a true joining that goes far beyond relating. In the stillness of presence, you can sense the formless essence in yourself and in the other as one. Knowing the oneness of yourself and the other is true love, true care, true compassion. That brings us to the end of that passage as well. I'm tempted to continue reading. I'm not sure if that's out of guilt from not recording in so long, but I also feel perhaps there's a flow that we've stepped into, and the next passage, almost trickles down from the other passages. It's titled Triggers, so I feel inclined to continue this flow as well, to continue the. It feels like these passages are very closely related. So let's go for it. So it's titled Triggers. Some pain bodies react to only one particular kind of trigger or situation, which is usually one that resonates with a certain kind of emotional pain suffered in the past. For example, if a child grows up with parents for whom financial issues are the source of frequent drama and conflict, he or she may absorb the parent's fear around money and develop a pain body that is triggered whenever financial issues are involved. The child as adult gets upset or angry even over insignificant amounts of money. Behind the upset or anger lies issues of survival and intense fear. I have seen spiritual, that is to say, relatively conscious people who started to shout, blame, and make accusations the moment they picked up the phone to talk to their stockbroker or realtor. Just as there is a health warning on every package of cigarettes, perhaps there should be similar warnings on every banknote and bank statement. Money can activate the pain body and cause complete unconsciousness. Someone who in childhood was neglected or abandoned by one or both parents will likely develop a pain body that becomes triggered in any situation that resonates even remotely with their primordial pain of abandonment. A friend arriving a few minutes late to pick them up at the airport, or a spouse coming home late, can trigger a major pain body attack. If their partner or spouse leaves them or dies, the emotional pain they experience goes far beyond the pain that is natural in such a situation. It may be intense anguish, long-lasting, incapacitating depression, or obsessive anger. A woman who in childhood was physically abused by her father may find that her pain body becomes easily activated in any close relationship with a man. Alternatively, the emotion that makes up her pain body may draw her to a man whose pain body is similar to that of her father. Her pain body may feel a magnetic pull to someone who it senses will give it more of the same pain. That pain is sometimes misinterpreted as falling in love. A man who had been an unwanted child and was given no love and a minimum of care and attention by his mother developed a heavy, ambivalent pain body that consisted of unfulfilled, intense longing for his mother's love and attention, and at the same time, intense hatred toward her for withholding what he so desperately needed. When he became an adult, almost every woman would trigger his pain body's neediness, a form of emotional pain, and this would manifest as an addictive compulsion to conquer and seduce almost every woman he met, and in this way get the female love and attention that the pain body craved. He became quite an expert on seduction, but as soon as a relationship turned intimate, all his advances were rejected. The pain body's anger towards his mother would come up and sabotage the relationship. When you recognize your own pain body as it arises, you will also quickly learn what the most common triggers are that activate it, whether it be situations or certain things other people do or say. When those triggers occur, you will immediately see them for what they are and enter a heightened state of alertness. Within a second or two, you will also notice the emotional reaction, that is the arising pain body. But in that state of alert presence, you won't identify with it, which means the pain body cannot take you over and become the voice in your head. If you are with your partner at the time, you may tell him or her, "What you just said or did triggered my pain body." Have an agreement with your partner that whenever either of you says or does something that triggers the other person's pain body, you will immediately mention it. In this way, the pain body can no longer renew itself through drama in the relationship, and instead of pulling you into unconsciousness, will help you become fully present. Every time you are present when the pain body arises, some of the pain body's negative emotional energy will burn up, as it were, and become transmuted into presence. the rest of the pain body will quickly withdraw and wait for a better opportunity to arise again. That is to say, when you are less conscious. A better opportunity for the pain body to arise may come whenever you lose presence. Perhaps after you have had a few drinks or while watching a violent film. The tiniest negative emotion, such as being irritated or anxious, can also serve as a doorway through which the pain body can return. The pain body needs your unconsciousness. It cannot tolerate the light of presence. And that brings us to the end of that passage there. So a series of passages that talk about different aspects of the pain body and recognizing what keeps you there and recognizing what can free you from the pain body, as the title suggests of the chapter called Breaking Free. So we began with the passage of unhappiness as well, and the first sort of note, that the first sort of point or sentence that comes out is at the beginning, that not all unhappiness is of the pain body, that some of it is new unhappiness, created whenever you are out of alignment with the present moment. So there's always opportunities that we can add to our unhappiness or add to our pain body, especially if it's not burned away in the present moment. Because there can be unhappiness, there can be a moment of misalignment, and then there could be like an angry reaction, but then there can be an immediate catching of that, and immediately that reaction is let go. It is not trapped within you. But there can be times when there's a reaction and it's not noticed, and then that becomes almost, it binds with the emotional pain body, and it adds to it as well. So it so both things are possible there, but it's the being aware that unhappiness there is not always the pain body. It could be a new unhappiness. And then Eckhart shares that when you recognize that the present moment is always already the case and therefore inevitable, you can bring an uncompromising inner yes to it, which will prevent further unhappiness. It will prevent, as we talked about previously, sometimes this happens by coincidence, where I share a pointer from Eckhart and it comes up in a chapter, so it's come up here as well. So with the uncompromising inner yes, the reason it's uncompromising is because you're aware that's all there is. It can be nothing else but what is happening now, the yes to what is happening. Then this breaks inner resistance. And then when there's no inner resistance, there is no further unhappiness there. And another word for this can possibly, the inner yes, it could be acceptance or allowing as well. You are allowing, okay, this is what's happening. It doesn't matter what it is. I think Eckhart uses some really extreme examples of, of being homeless and you've got 50 pence in your pocket, and it's accepting the isness of that moment, not accepting the situation, of being homeless. Just accepting, okay, in this moment, there is 50 pence in my pocket in this moment. There may be hunger, okay. So it's, just accepting what is. So you're not adding a, mental commentary. There's no reaction, egoic reaction to it, egoic story to it. It's very different to feel that, okay, you are, cold, you're hungry. Okay, this is not something that's pleasant. It's something, okay, I don't want to feel these things. To very different to having a mental commentary of, why is it always so cold? Or, I should have brought my coat with me. Why didn't I bring my coat? I'm so stupid. And you can very quickly, and it's quicker than a blink of an eye, these reactions we have in us as well. So the uncompromising yes is, okay, this is what is happening here. This is all the clothes I have with me. It's cold, okay. What actions can I take right now? Perhaps I can warm up with walking. I can, power walk back home to retrieve my coat, or I can walk into a cafe, warm up with a hot drink. So you're acting from the place of yes, of acceptance, of non-emotional reaction. And he shares almost the components of pain body, or the perhaps components is the wrong word, but perhaps the what can influence and impose upon the pain body. So it's said that the pain body and ego are close relatives. They need each other. The triggering event or situation is then interpreted and reacted to through the screen of a heavily emotional ego. So they kind of empower one another in some respects. And it's also good to note that, as it says here, someone possessed by a heavy pain body, it is often impossible to step outside his or her distorted interpretation. And I think this can be related to my personal situation of my recent unwellness. It's been exactly that. Perhaps it's hard to say that it's been a constant pain body for the last month, but there's been very sort of, for me, it's been sort of heavy mental unwellness. I'm not sure if that's the same as just pain body. Perhaps it's neither. It's not like black and white. It's not either one or the other. It's possibly a combination of both. I feel mental illness, mental health, and pain body. But I feel this is a good point to cover as well. That once, if we have a heavy pain body and it's overtaken us, that quite often it's impossible to step outside of that. It's a case of, when it passes, or when it's fed enough on your thinking, when it's processed, it's gone through its process, only then awakening can happen again, where for the last few hours I was just completely overtaken there. There was no presence at all. I didn't know what happened there. And it's acknowledging that as well, not being hard on ourselves, having sort of a gentle acceptance of this is the nature of pain body, especially for those of us who have a heavy pain body. It can happen this way. And then Eckhart, in the following passage, we move into breaking identification with the pain body. So there's the example of Ethel, and I always mention this about the stories Eckhart shares, that how I really connect with them, and they're a joy to read. I think, we've read a few stories now, and I remember sort of The Lost Ring, we talked about that, and there's a similar sort of essence of that story as well, about the relative importance of our emotional stories. And, in this case with Ethel, of course, there's some serious things happening that require her attention, that require her to take action, but Eckhart's pointing out the emotional story that is behind this here, and the relative importance of it. That although, yes, there is some importance to it, it's to do with her living situation, but it's not life and death. And the emotional charge and energy is so severe, as Eckhart mentions, out of proportion to what is really happening here. If we look at what's happening for Ethel, it's a dispute over a payment of some kind. But of course, with the emotional story, as I'll try and quote the language here, they sent me another disturbing letter today. They are conducting a vendetta against me, and so, of course, it's reading this, you can feel the charge of the pain body arising, of that me versus them. They've done, they keep doing this to me, the companies and the bureaucracy of it all. And Ethel goes on to say, you must help. We need to fight them together. There's that's, if there was a language of the pain body, there it is. We need to fight them together. So such a powerful story there, when it says here, she talked for 10 minutes or so, and it's good. And I'm just going to read what Eckhart's response is when she was talking. He says, I sat, looked and listened. So that can seem quite difficult to do, because it can seem uncaring, and it can seem that way. I think Eckhart goes on to share that towards the end, that it says here, the thinking mind cannot understand presence, and so will often misinterpret it. It will say that you are uncaring, distant, or have no compassion, that you are not relating. And that's so accurate as well, because when someone's talking, it's so automatic to say, that's terrible what you've been through, and in a deeper sense, you're trying to say, I care about what you're saying. I care about your emotions of how you feel, and perhaps in this sense, you're not adding to the emotional fuel, which can quite often happen. In this case, Eckhart just gave her a full attention and listened, and that presence, it transmitted within Ethel as well. Eckhart, it says here, there was almost a non-doing there, where he wasn't adding anything to Ethel's emotional story. He was almost not giving it fuel, so it almost dwindled. And in that moment of interaction, there was a brief awakening happening there. So that's something I can personally sort of take on board when somebody is going through a difficult time. I remember Ram Dass talking about this, where he was with somebody, they were kind of giving this huge emotional story, and Ram Dass sat quietly listening, perhaps for a similar duration, 10 minutes and I think all Ram Dass said to them is, I hear you. And then she kind of said again, yeah, but you're not listening, this happened. And then very gently said, I hear you. And in that same way, he was not adding to her, to that person's emotional story. the same way as Eckhart, sat silently listening. So there's not one way to do it. You can respond, but responding with presence. That's something I often say to people when I'm on the receiving end of a text message where someone is sharing a story or a difficult time they're going through. I quite often say, I hear you, in my written response, or I verbally sometimes say, I hear you. And but it is kind of reaffirming that sense of not adding to their emotional story, and perhaps you can embrace your own sort of your own what's comfortable for you. It's not a sort of robotic process where you stand and be present as they're talking and going on. You can include whatever feels comfortable for you. You can still be yourself. You can still incorporate that into giving a non-emotional response to somebody, such as saying, I really hear what you're going through. I hear that, and I'm sure there's many other ways that you can respond in a non-emotional way that cultivates a present space or spaciousness within that person, where you're not adding an accelerant, another log to the fire of the emotional story. You're holding it gently in a compassionate space in whatever words you share with that person. I feel that those words will naturally come from you, whatever words that are often said or shared, that will come from that space. And then finally, last, we moved on to triggers as well, and recognizing what can trigger our own pain bodies. And Eckhart gives quite a few examples of certain events that people have go through in their lifetimes, and perhaps that can also, we can reflect upon that ourselves, of perhaps a certain major events we've been through, major difficulties or traumas, that we can reaffirm in our awareness that yes, this is a trigger for pain body. As I was reading that about somebody with financial difficulties or financial problems that their parents have been through, then that triggers them as they get older. It feels like that's something within me as well, about there's something about people who own property, landlords and landladies who own or persons who own properties and rent them out. Perhaps there's a reaction in me that there's a greed for money. There's all this money being made, and of course it's not a truth. Maybe there's some people out there who own property, who rent them out, who overcharge, or who try to make as much money as possible, who buy more properties, and there's a sense of more. I want more money, but it may not be. Of course, it's not the case for everyone. For some, it's their main source of income to have that. But there's something in me that reacts to it. Perhaps it's part of my pain body when it comes to something to do with renting. So that's something for me to reflect upon as well and process gently. It may not be like a direct working and figuring out. It's a lot of it is just giving it awareness and allowing it to process within us. And just to read about, every time, this is towards the end of this passage here, every time you are present when the pain body arises. So whenever you're able to catch the pain body as it arises, some of the pain body's negative emotional energy will burn up, as it were, and become transmuted into presence. And the rest of the pain body will quickly withdraw and wait for a better opportunity to arise again. That is to say, when you are less conscious. And I'll just end with reading the final line of the passage titled Triggers. So this is the final sentence there. Eckhart says, the pain body needs your unconsciousness. It cannot tolerate the light of presence. So I'll leave it there, and I feel feel that was quite a lot of reading there, but it felt good to continue the flow of those three passages together. And I think the rest of them, of course, are going to be closely related to breaking free of pain body, breaking free of this, egoic conditioning, emotional energy. And perhaps you can tell in my voice that I feel quite tired and quite drained as well. But it was. I'm very grateful I was able to record tonight. It means a lot to me. Recording this, it's for me personally. It's me helping myself in this way. It's by no means. I've said this before. It's by no means, me teaching anyone or being a source here. This is me learning, me working on myself alongside you, and a very, it's almost like a peer support. I see it that way. And it's quite. I'm very grateful. There is a space for this where I'm able to help myself and also share it. Where other people who are listening, you are on your journey, and we're doing this together. Of course, we are in our own sort of, in some ways, although we are connected, there is also our own personal journeys, our challenges, our own unfolding into presence. I almost see this almost like a big motorway or freeway. We're all heading in that direction, but we may be in separate lanes, and and different locations on the freeway as well, or the motorway. So it's quite comforting to to know that, and when I do hear some feedback from yourselves, it's encouraging, and I'm grateful for that as well. Okay, so yeah, it's a good place to end here, and yeah, I feel quite rejuvenated reading that. I feel that it's almost a bit of medicine for me, especially during this difficult time that I'm going through as well. It's yes, so feeling very grateful. Thank you so much for accompanying me, for listening, for walking alongside me on this journey into now. And as always, I think I've forgotten my ending. What do I always say? Perhaps it's not important, as we learned in Ethel's story. Perhaps instead I can say to take good care of yourselves, and I will speak to you again very soon. Bye.